Okay, let's have everybody take their seats and we'll get started, please. I'm going to use the gavel because that's why I want to do this. Okay, we're calling the meeting to order at 5:31, May 11th. Welcome to the 2021 deliberative session of the Town of Waterville Valley's town meeting. My name is Joan Sweeney, and I'll be your moderator tonight. I'd like to thank you all for keeping your mask on during the meeting and respecting your friends and neighbors. When you come to the microphone to ask a question, you may lower your mask to make it easier for everyone to hear you. We have all sorts of disinfectant up there. Please use them for your safety. If everybody could all turn off their electronic devices, we would appreciate that. Now we'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by two Waterville Valley Elementary School 8th graders, Kate Mercada and Lily McKee. There's a flag up here and over on the far end.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kate and Lily. First, I'd like to introduce the head table, the Board of Selectmen, Chairman Margaret Turner, Rich Rita, and Mike Aronson. You'd all wave. Town Manager Mark Dakota, Finance and HR Administrator Judy Rolfe, Sharon Sharon, the Town Clerk Assistant, and we have a new Administrative Assistant started just this week or so, Alicia Harrington. To welcome her, she'll be the one answering the phones and meeting you at the counter. For department heads, we have Brooke Wakefield, Director of the Rec Department. They're all over there. Chris Hodges, Director of Department of Safety. Dave Noyes, the Police Chief. And Dylan Tucker, the Wastewater Plant Chief Operator. So because of COVID, this year's town meeting is being done in two parts. Articles 1 through 8 were voted on during the March town election. We will be discussing and voting on Articles 9 through 26 today. Please reference the green pages in your town report. As I said, we'll be starting with Article 9. Now, only people, got a lot of stuff here. Only people with red cards are eligible to vote. If you are a registered voter and you checked in, you should have received a red card as well as a ballot packet, which has a blue ballot, a yellow ballot, and a handful of white ballots in case we need them. If for some reason you did not receive them or have not checked in yet, please do so. Your vote will not count unless you have these. Okay. First, I'd ask you to read briefly the moderator's rules of procedure, which is either on page 27 of your town report, or there was also a sheet when you checked in. If you take a moment to read them, it'll help me run an orderly and efficient meeting. The long and the short of it is I will call on people for questions based on raised hands. If you're a registered voter, please raise your red card. A non-registered voter can just raise their hands and I'll recognize them. When you're called upon, if you come up to the microphone, state your name and go about with your questioning. You'll be allowed 3 minutes, a maximum of 3 minutes for each question. If you're unable to come up to the microphone, let me know and we will bring it down to you. Now, Article 9 and 10 are bond issues and they are required to be written ballots because of the size of the bond. We will begin discussing Article 9 which is the, we'll come to that. We'll begin discussing Article 9. Upon completion of the discussion, we'll move on to Article 10. Once the discussion on both of these articles is complete, I'll call for a vote on both of these articles. The ballot box, which is over there, will be open for 1 hour. While that is going on, while that 1 hour is happening, we will discuss the other articles. If there are no other procedural questions, we will begin. We good? Okay. Do I hear a motion on Article 9?
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5 million gross budget for the engineering, repairs, improvements, permitting, and construction of facilities for wastewater collection and treatment and associated building improvements. $5 million of such sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds or notes under and in compliance with the provisions of Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, as amended. To authorize the Board of Selectmen to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, gifts, and donations, if any, which may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project. To authorize the Board of Selectmen to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and the maturity and other terms thereof. And to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take any other action necessary to carry out this vote or to pass any other vote relative thereto.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Rich. Please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article. This article takes a 3/5 majority vote to pass. Mark would like to make a presentation.
Yes, Madam Moderator. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to give you, because this is one of the largest warrant articles that we've had in decades here in the town, I would like to go over some information for those of you who were not able to attend our bond meetings in the prior months. First of all, I'd like to talk about reasons for this project. Our existing plant is 47 years old. A lot of the equipment in the plant is original to when the plant was built. We have made repairs or replaced equipment that is broken, but there is some key components of the plant that are original. So they're closing in on 50 years old. We have been having problems over the last couple of years finding people, contractors to make repairs when we've had things break. A lot of the companies that originally provided us with equipment are no longer in business. So it is difficult to find repair parts for some of the equipment, and just finding people who know how that equipment works is getting more and more difficult. Additionally, we were notified in December of last year that we are facing a new EPA permit for the plant. The EPA controls the effluent, the water that we discharge into the Mad River after we treat it. Okay, so wastewater comes down the hill and comes into the plant through our lagoons that you may have seen there by Town Hall. It's treated inside the wastewater treatment plant, and once it is clean, it is then discharged out and goes into the Mad River. That takes an EPA permit to do that. The information that they have given us, we have not seen the new permit requirements yet. However, the information that they have provided us verbally is that the requirements, the EPA requirements, are going to be much more stringent than they have been in the past. So we are basically working under the same guidelines that we had originally in the plant. They have changed very little in the last almost 50 years. But our new permit will be much different, and it will cause us to put in new equipment or actually go potentially to an entirely new process in order to treat the wastewater. We do not know when that implementation date will be. We expect to get the new permit requirements within the next month, but they have been telling us that basically since January. So it could be any day. Once we get the new permit requirements, we will have 30 days to give feedback back to the EPA. They will take our feedback and information from the state of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Science Services, and they will maybe modify the permit, maybe not, but they will finalize the permit probably in the early fall. So it will be something that we will be working on for basically for the next year or more, trying to get this new plan. So what have we done to date? Oops. Yeah, okay. So far, we have, when we got the new information from the EPA, we started looking at what our options would be. First, we looked at our existing plant and we said, okay, if we had to implement these new requirements, can we do it with the building that we have and the equipment that we have? The answer to that was very quickly no, because of the age of it, and the new requirements are just so much more involved than what we currently do. We could not do it with what we currently have in place. There are different technologies that are available to us, obviously, in the last 50 years. There have been a lot of advances in the wastewater treatment area. So we started looking at what is new and available. And we even started looking at a totally different way to treat the wastewater. So instead of actually sending it into the Mad River, we could do what's called groundwater discharge. So we started looking at those options. Again, because we don't have the final permit requirements, we haven't done a whole lot of investigation at this point, but we're starting to gather information of areas and options that we'll be looking at in more detail coming up. We do know, in addition, that we will have to maintain our current plant while we are building something new. And as I said, because of the age, the plant is giving us some maintenance problems. So part of this money, if you noticed in the wording of this warrant article, some of this money, if the existing plant breaks in the next 2 to 3 years while we're coming up with the new plant, some of this money may be used to actually keep what we have working. Because when we're going through this, of course, in order for folks to live here and come and visit and for the resort to operate, we're going to have to continue to treat wastewater. So it isn't like we're going to be able to shut it off, build something new, and then start up again, right? So that's why that wording is in the warrant article, to potentially use some of this money to repair what we have. We are looking, when we make repairs, we are going to be making those repairs with an eye to reusing whatever new equipment we buy. So if we have a pump or something that breaks on our existing plant, if we replace it, it will be with a pump that we can use in the new plant. So we're gonna try not to put any money into this that'll be a lost cost when we come to the new plant. We are going to be looking at a lot of engineering costs in the next year. Department of Environmental Services and the EPA requires us to do a very extensive engineering study before they will permit our new plant. They make us look at different options, and there's all kinds of environmental considerations that we're going to have to look at. We could potentially use this money for land purchase, depending on the option that we go to. We could need additional land in order to build the new plant. We also will pilot new technologies. So they have the ability now to bring new ways to treat wastewater in, like in a trailer or something like that, and connect it to our existing plant, and use the new technology for a month or more and try it out. So we will pilot things. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there, algae that eats bacteria and all kinds of stuff. So we will look at all the new technologies and we will pilot them before we settle on a final design. And then we have the federal and state permitting responses that the money will be used for. Also, we are looking at a total cost for the entire new plant, if we have to build it from the ground up, of anywhere between $16 and $22 million are the current engineering estimates. This $5 million then is the first part of that money. Our intent is to do all the engineering over the next year and a half, and come back to town meeting 2023 with the final design and final approvals from the EPA and DES, and then ask for whatever the rest of the cost is. Depending on the how the maintenance of the existing plant goes, depending on how our environmental studies go and everything else, we could use some of this $5 million towards that construction cost. We really don't know at this point, but we selected $5 million because it gives us enough money to get done what we need to. And interest rates are very good right now, so we want to do that. That
That's
is
it.
all my
Okay, that's your
information. There you go.
Do we have any questions? $5 million bond, no questions? Bob?
Bob Freeze, wouldn't it be better to wait till we know what the EPA requires before we start spending money? It seems to me once we're a little bit pregnant, we're going to be looking at a new plant regardless. And it seems to me that maybe we ought to be waiting until we know what the requirements are.
Thank you.
We only have this one town meeting each year. If we wait and do not appropriate, and really all this is authorization for this money. This money is not going to be borrowed immediately. We will probably make arrangements for some sort of anticipation note, which means we will use money as we need it. We will not go out and sell the bond next week. So because we know that we're going to get the EPA written permit this year, we need to have money available to start the engineering for the plant. It's a very long process to do that. If we don't appropriate the money now, we have to wait until March of next year in order to get an authorization from town meeting to start spending money. So we would lose, 8 months, 9 months of time, plus we would not have any money or very little money to do repairs on the plant if something major fails in this interim. So that's why we're asking for that authorization now.
Mark, could you expand a little bit about some of the problems we've been having recently?
Yeah, right now we actually have a crew that is investigating some sort of leak that we're having in the intake pipe into the plant. So the water coming down, the wastewater coming down from town, coming into the plant is we have some sort of leak that's going on. That could be a very major expense if that line is broken somewhere. We also have had problems on the embankment around the lagoons right above Town Hall. Those walls that you see when you park in the parking lot. We have had a couple of leaks that have shown up, and we think that the lagoons themselves are starting to leak. And it's an age thing. So both of those situations could be fairly substantial amounts of money to repair, and there are things that we would need to repair immediately. So again, that's another reason to do this appropriation.
Katie?
Katie Smith. If we say no, and you have to do repairs now before the next meeting, does that money come out of the fund balance, or does that just not happen?
There would be no way to do it. I mean, we have about, well, there are warrant articles for emergency repair monies, $20,000 or $30,000 or those sorts of things. We do have small balances in those amounts. But we spent, I believe it was $46,000 last year, starting to address the first leaks that happened at the lagoons. So we do not have a lot of money available and nothing really planned other than this bond issue for major repairs at the plant.
Tim Smith, 97 Boulder Path. You stated that it was $5 million was the request now, and then $16 to $22 million for the full plan. Is that $5 million in the 16?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is the first part of that total.
And then also, could you walk us through the time frame a little more in detail? You get the EPA, I know the piloting technology and engineering.
Yep.
Could you walk us through that time frame just
Sure.
a little bit?
If this bond issue passes, we would wait for the EPA permit to actually be issued. We would have a 30-day comment period, as I said. We would give information back to the EPA. We anticipate 2 to 3 months for them to come back with the actual final permit. But in the interim, once we get the EPA permit, we would start with our engineering study. There has to be, as I said, by DES regulation, our engineer has to develop at least 2 or 3 options for wastewater treatment that we could do here. That engineering study, we anticipate will take about 6 to 8 months, somewhere around there. The DES, New Hampshire DES, gets to comment on that, give us feedback, and then they would begin once that study is complete and accepted by DES. We would make a final determination on what type of plant we want to build. At that point in time, they will start the design work. That probably will take us past town meeting next year. We will complete design work by the fall of 2022. And then we would put the project out to bid for a contractor to actually do construction. Our hope is that we would have final bids back by the winter of 2022, and we would be able to come into town meeting in March with an actual bid in hand. Then we would ask for the balance that we would need at that town meeting. But we would actually not be working on engineering estimates. We would have a hard bid in hand.
And how long to build?
And then the construction of the actual plant would probably take, 2.5 years to finish it.
While Barry's walking up, I'd like to make a comment that I don't know if we're all aware of. We've had significantly less rainfall in the last time period and more significant failures of our system. So our system really needs to be addressed, because if we have go back to an average amount of rainfall with the increased population we've got in here, Dylan could probably speak more to this, but we're going to need some really strong fixes, not just Band-Aids anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's a big deal. Go ahead, Barry.
My question is the 5 million only to be used for the wastewater treatment project? That's my first question. And then the other question is, what happens if 5 million is not enough?
So yeah, the first answer, Barry, is yes, it's only for the purposes that are enumerated in the warrant article. Okay, so we can only use it for engineering, repairs, improvements, permitting, and construction of facilities for wastewater collection and treatment. And it's for the wastewater treatment plant area and the surrounding facilities. There's another warrant article later that is for the collection system, right? That's the manholes and the collection pipes. That's the emergency money that we use if there's a main that breaks or a manhole that develops a leak or something like that. And again, we won't take this actual bond issue until we are at the point where we've actually spent money. So if there were a need, something huge breaks at the plant, at the existing plant now, and we needed $6 million instead of 5, right? We would have to come back in 2022 for another bond issue. We can't increase this amount of money without approval from town meeting. Did that answer your question, Barry?
You may want to mention, Mark, the vigorous efforts the town or you have put into looking for grants.
Yeah, and great. Thank you, Rich. If you notice also that some of this, there is the authorization in this warrant article that instead of bonding the $5 million, that we can accept grants and other funding sources. And we have already applied in several different directions. There's, as everyone has probably heard in the news, there's all kinds of infrastructure money that Congress is trying to appropriate right now. And we actually, this project and the road project are both on our congressional delegations sites, and we've already applied for and are starting to move through the system in some of that funding. So we will try both this, the Economic Development Agency, the Northern Borders Regional Commission has a grant program. We will apply for every grant that we possibly can. Additionally, the state has a state revolving fund, which offers interest rates even lower than the going bond rate, which is around 2.5%. The state fund gets as low as 1 to 1.5%. So we are also applying for state revolving fund low interest loan programs. So we will try to do this as inexpensively as we possibly can.
Robert Deem, Sunnyside Condos. Mark, is there limiting language in this if there are grants and potential to get money at a lower cost or even grant money. Are we limited by the language of this article to the $5 million, or would you be able to get more than that if it were available?
Yeah, we are limited at this point to the $5 million. There are some provisions, but I don't think that it applies. We will check with Department of Revenue Administration that if a very large sum of money were made available to communities where we could potentially go in and get, half or 2/3 of the total cost, then we would ask Department of Revenue Administration if we could do a special town meeting or something like that. But the language here limits the selectmen, including the grants, to the $5 million. A special town meeting, while we're waiting, a special town meeting is very difficult to do, but if there's a large pot of money at stake, we will do it.
Alan Burko, Jennings Peak Road. Can you talk to when you'll know if the plant that exists can be retrofitted, if that's the right word? If you have to build a new one, where are you going to find land?
That's part of the engineering study that's done up front. So when they're looking at their and when they're looking at the different options for us, they will evaluate our plant and the ability to use that area, again, for the new plant, or even the equipment in it and reuse it. We will evaluate that. But given the age of the equipment that's in there and the new technologies that are available, and again, what we've been told by EPA so far, we're not holding out much hope for the existing plant being usable. That is a very good question. And we don't have any answers for that right now because we need to do a lot more engineering work before we can really talk about that. We are very limited, as you probably all are aware, very limited with the amount of land that we have around the existing plant and the rest of the town complex. And there's, again, very little private or public land elsewhere in the town. So I don't know if it'll be going to the National Forest with our begging face on or what, but you can ask Tim. That doesn't always work, doesn't hardly ever work. So we'll be working on that hard, and we will provide an update in the 2022 town meeting as to the status of where we are with that.
Any other questions?
Thank you for all of your questions, because it is a lot of money. Okay, come on.
And this goes to the select board as well as Mark. What is the plans around hockey in the community?
So we can hold on for a question about hockey till later on in the meeting. Right now, we're just talking about the bond article number 9.
Okay.
Okay?
So I can come back and ask my
Yes,
question?
we have open questions towards
All right.
the end. Thank you.
Roger that.
Sorry. Anything else relative to Article 9? Okay, then as I said, we're going to hold off on voting on Article 9 till we complete Article 10. Do I hear a motion on Article 10?
Madam Moderator, this is Rich. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $900,000 for engineering, repairs, site work, drainage, permitting, and repaving of town-maintained roads and sidewalks. $900,000 of such sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds or notes under and in compliance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act as amended. To authorize the Board of Selectmen to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, gifts, and donations, if any, which may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project. To authorize the Board of Selectmen to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and the maturity and other terms thereof. And to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take any other action necessary to carry out this vote or to pass any other vote relative thereto.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article, and this article takes a 3/5 majority to pass. Mark has a short presentation.
Short presentation, I promise. So on this one, this is the first year of a multi-year road repaving plan. We have, we're basing this on our 2014 pedestrian study that we had, which looked at all of the ways that pedestrians, bicycles, and cars move around the valley. And we have had an engineering assessment of all of our roads and the condition, their current condition. We completed that at the beginning of this year. We also have engineer recommendations as part of that road assessment that prioritizes every road in town from best to worst and gives us an engineering cost estimate to repair all of those. So we're going to be working that into our capital improvements program. This is the first step of that. It addresses Valley Road, Tecumseh Road, and Snows Brook Road down to the Village Road intersection. So it's the entrance into town and one of the more heavily trafficked areas that we have in our road system. We are going to also do immediate maintenance on 4 other roads because the engineers are recommending that we spend a little bit of money now to prevent us from having to spend a lot of money later. So we will be addressing those. And this is one of the projects that's already been moved forward by Congresswoman Custer. She has submitted this to the House Appropriations Committee for an earmark project. So this, we are looking at 80% of this $900,000 being paid directly by the federal government. So it would not run through any other organization or the state. The money would come directly from Congress, but it could be up to $700,000 or more from the federal government. That's all I have on that.
Questions? You guys are easy tonight. Hey, we've got one in the back. Whoop, sorry. And please remember to state your name when you come up.
Leo Barros. So if you appropriate the 900,000, you get money from the federal government. What happens to the rest of the money? How is that going to be used?
This authorization is only for the total project cost. That's why it says gross budget. So the
Understood, but if you get the bonds for it and part of it is paid by the government, the bonds, you still have the bonds outstanding. So what happens to that money?
we don't ever take the bonds. That's why we don't bond this until we actually do the project. So we will know about the federal money first, and we will only borrow what the balance is, the 20%. Yeah.
Jeff, did you have a question?
Jeff Maudsley. I don't know about the study that was done, but does it address lack of sidewalks on Tecumseh Road, which is a pretty busy road and no way to walk on safely?
Yes, and this project is to do the road repairs and repaving and build an 8 to 10 foot wide pedestrian bike path attached to the road. So that is part of all 3 roads will have a pedestrian bike path on it.
This is part of the pedestrian study.
And that was because of the recommendations of the 2014 pedestrian study. Yep.
Anybody else?
What are the other 4 roads? Katie Smith.
I knew you'd ask me. Okay. Bean Bender and wait a minute. Packard's Road, Golden Heights, Greeley Hill, Drakes Brook, and Bean Bender. And the reason that those are being done again is because there's very little repairs that have to be done. They can be overlaid, so a little bit of drainage improvement, that sort of thing. So by spending tens of thousands of dollars, you prevent having to completely rebuild the road several years down the road. So.
Is that it? If that's it, I'll ask the ballot clerks to come over and prepare yourself for the ballots. As I said, we're going to vote on Article 9 and Article 10. Article 9 is the blue one in your little packet. Mark your choice on that. Article 10 is the yellow. You're going to mark it and you're going to drop it off in the ballot box where Terry is. Raise your hand, Terry. The polls will be open for 1 hour. We're going to start by having the left-hand side of the room from the microphone over. You may go cast your votes now. Once they've cleared out, we'll do the right side. And I would ask you to keep social distancing and your 6 feet in mind as you do that. And we'll start the balloting now at 6:14.
Okay, so, yeah. Can I get the town report?
I got all sorts of junk in there. Hang on. I don't know. See what falls out.
These were good questions.
Yeah. Coffee clutch.
What's that?
It's like a coffee clutch. Yeah. I'm very. Well, we've had a number of hearings and.
Yeah.
That's good.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Yeah, some days it's just the drugs, I think, just get to him. Is his wife here? What? Is he with his wife? We'll take her aside.
Just to clarify, we need you have we'd like you to vote for Article 9 in the blue and Article 10 in the yellow and drop them both in the same ballot box.
Instead of screaming across to you.
Okay, I think we can probably take the right-hand side now.
Yeah, well, you missed your chance. You're on that side, so you can't vote now. Wait till I make up the next word article. I guess we can do it. But we're on this side. So it might be missed your chance.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did. I did. So. Microphone right there. Yep. So. No. I'm just going to show you. Here it is. There it is. Okay. Good. It's the second one you sent me.
All righty. 15 articles. Any other?
Is that right? Yep, that's it. Thank you. Yep. Hi, Lisa. The what? It's going to be, hopefully, if this passes, it will be. Yep.
Okay, if everybody can take their seats, we'll try to keep moving along. As I said, the polls are open for 1 hour. At 7:14, the polls will close, but we have a lot to cover still. I also have somebody's red card that they left at the bake sale table. So if you want to vote, you need to come get this. Okay, do I have a motion? Do I hear a motion on Article 11?
I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $68,000 for the maintenance of Packard's Field and installation of a new playground equipment. This appropriation is to come from the December 31st, 2020 fund balance available on January 1st, 2021.
I second the motion.
Please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article. This article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. The vote will be a voice vote, and a simple majority is required for approval. Any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Brooke, do you first want to make a presentation? Brooke Wakefield, Director of the Rec Department.
Just quickly, the reason why we need a new playground is because the current playground that we have is quite outdated and it does not meet the ASTM safety standards. So we'd like to get up to code with that, and also our recent growth of our youth population, I think would really appreciate it. We do have a picture, an image of what's possible for the new playground. It would be a similar size to our existing playground. And with some of the features that we've noticed that kids have really enjoyed, adding more of those, and also an ADA component to the entire playground. So let's see, also the upgraded safety surfacing would go from sand, which is really only good for about a 4-foot fall, to a engineered wood, fiber wood, which would be more to a 9 to 10-foot fall. So it would just be a real upgrade for our town, and also not very many splinters. So that's a huge feature right now of our playground.
Thank you. Any questions?
Claire Helfman, I would like to know what percentage of the total number of either new equipment or whatever things that you are presenting will be handicap available and presentable and usable for the children that come.
So we're looking at 2 proposals from 2 different companies, and both are ADA compliant.
Can you explain what ADA appliance means? It's a disabilities.
Yeah, it's the Disability Act, and so it makes it more usable for everybody. We don't currently have that in our existing playground, and it's everything you build now, you really need to be more inclusive.
I know that, but I'm looking at the pictures, and at our other home, we are redoing a public playground, and everything that is being purchased for the children, anyone wheelchair bound, you name it, it's applicable for them. And this does not look like that for me. And so to have a small percentage, to have a few things, I couldn't support it. I'd like to see something that almost, if not 100%, at least 80% of children with disabilities, from autism to to CP, you name it. But these children are forgotten. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. We will take that into consideration. This is not a final proposal, the picture that you're looking at. It's an example, but once again, it is ADA compliant. You can't see all angles of the playground with this one image, but I'd be happy to chat with you at another time if you'd like.
Any other questions?
I have a comment and a question. Sleo Pirates. Comment is that in Boston, the Menino Park over at the Spalding Rehab Center is all ADA compliant. What happens when you make everything ADA compliant is that you have kids who are normal kids who break the ADA compliant equipment. So please, if you take that into consideration, that if you make everything ADA compliant, some of the stuff's going to get broken by kids who are not disabled. The question I have too is for the field. Does it include drainage?
Yes, that's the second part of this warrant article is what we are going to get formal bids for the playground equipment. The balance of the money that we do not use for the playground equipment purchase will be used to start engineering and looks at the drainage, especially on Packard's Field. We know that we have to make some improvements there. I don't think we'll have enough money with this particular appropriation to address all of the problems that we have on the field right now, but we can at least start with the engineering to look at it and come back with some more information for you, because we have not spent a lot of time looking at the field from that standpoint yet. So yes, we are going to address especially the drainage. And go ahead.
Katie Smith, can you explain the fund balance? Because you
Yes.
did that last year for me.
Yep.
And can you tell us what the balance of the fund balance is?
Yes.
Thank-
So let me just get back to my slide here. So fund balance is basically the checkbook balance of the town is a way to think about it. Or it's a part of the checkbook balance of the town that's not designated for another purpose. So it is the result of underspending the budget each year or collecting more revenue than you anticipated when you set the tax rate. So that surplus, which I hate that word, but that surplus amount of money from the additional revenue or the underspending of the budget goes into this undesignated fund balance. We purposely each year pick projects. Most of them are one-time construction type things, upgrading facilities, and we use that money to offset the tax rate. Instead of raising new taxes, we use a portion of the undesignated fund balance to fund these projects. And that's what this project is, what it's being done. Our current fund balance is about $827,000 roughly. It is recommended best management practices from the state of New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration is that we maintain a fund balance between 5 and 15% roughly of the budget. And we're at about 11 to 12% right now. So we have a good fund balance, but it also is used by the selectmen when we set the tax rate to take down the tax rate a little bit so that you don't have big fluctuations. So they are allowed by state law to apply some of that fund balance when we set the tax rate. And that's a discussion they have every year. As an example, last year we used $310,000 of fund balance to offset taxes, okay, for projects or for the tax rate setting. This year it's slightly lower because we had that large expenditure last year. And because of COVID, our revenues were kind of messed up. So we didn't return as much as we normally do at the end of the year. So we're only recommending the $148,000 amount this year.
Any other questions? No, okay, then we will take a vote on this. And this is, as I said, a voice vote, if you will. I'm going to ask you to raise your red card, either yes or no. All those in favor of Article 9? Where is it? Article 11. Oh, I just got that 5 million right in there. How about that? Of Article 11, should I repeat it? No. Article 11, please raise your, okay, all those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Do I hear a motion on Article 12?
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $33,500 for the payment of the third year of a 4-year lease for the Public Works backhoe. This appropriation is to come from general taxation.
I have a second.
I second the motion.
Please note the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article, and this article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. The vote will be a voice vote, and a simple majority is required for approval. Mark, did you want to do
This is, it's your choice. We, each year we have to bring the warrant articles for existing leases forward. All of our leases include a non-appropriation clause. So we have to get authorization from town meeting to continue paying for those existing leases. The backhoe is a critical piece of equipment for our Public Works Department. Does just about every job from plowing snow to moving earth, digging trenches, all kinds of stuff. So.
Any questions? No questions? Then we will have a vote on Article 12. All those in favor of Article 12? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Do I hear a motion on Article 13?
Madam Moderator, this is Rich. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 for emergency repairs and general maintenance of the water distribution and wastewater collection systems. This appropriation is to come from the December 31st, 2020 fund balance available on January 1st, 2021.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article, and the article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. Take any form will be a voice vote, and a simple majority is required for approval.
As we talked about with the $5 million bond issue warrant article, this is our emergency repair line to repair lines and other facilities like manholes and valves and that sort of thing. The amount, the $40,000, will be divided between the water and the wastewater departments. And it is a fund balance warrant article.
Any questions? Questions? All right, we will take a vote on Article 13. All those in favor of Article 13, raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Article 13 passes. Do I hear a motion on Article 14?
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $28,000 for the payment of a second-year lease of a 3-year lease for the Public Works 1-ton plow truck. This appropriation is to come from general taxation.
I second the motion.
Please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article, and this article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. Vote will be a voice vote, and a simple majority is required. Again, this is the second year of a 3-year lease, as Mark explained in the prior lease. Any questions? Oh, boy. So we will take a vote on Article 14. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Do I hear a motion on Article 15?
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 for the replacement of a selected guardrails and road drainage general maintenance in town. This appropriation is to come from general taxation.
Second?
I second the motion.
Please note the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article, and this article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. Again, be a voice vote, and a simple majority is required.
Questions?
Would you like to say anything, Mark? For Article 15? Yes.
On this article, the guardrails and drainage are more of a maintenance issue rather than a complete road repair. This would replace culverts and actual guardrails around town. And Jim and our road engineer have started going around town and identifying specific, although I'm sorry, this evening I do not have that list. they're identifying specific areas of town. It is a town-wide thing, not just on the roads that we have talked about to this point.
Any questions on Article 15?
Why would this be in an article, not in the general budget?
There's really no, we could have put it in the capital outlay portion of the overall budget. The idea that the selectmen just wanted the town to be able to see this as a specific warrant article. So it was just the way they wanted to approach it. It could have been done in the budget.
Any other questions? Oh, okay, we will vote on Article 15. All those in favor? Opposed? Article 15 passes. Okay, we'll move on to Article 16. Do I hear a motion on Article 16?
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to authorize the selectmen to enter into a 3-year lease agreement in the amount of $20,000 to be added to the fire apparatus repair and replacement capital reserve previously established. This appropriation is to come from the December 31st, 2020 fund balance available on January 1st, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, Mark is going to address something on that first at this
Yeah,
moment.
so this is not it is not a lease. So the word, I do have the wording incorrect here. I apologize. Well, hold on.
So do I have a
Rich?
motion on Article 16?
Can you read that? Sorry, I
Articles.
made
Right,
a mistake in the motion that I wrote for Rich to read.
All right, the correct Article 16 is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be added to the fire apparatus repair and replacement capital reserve previously established. This appropriation is to come from the December 31st, 2020 fund balance available on January 1st, 2021.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
So this fund is used to repair our fire trucks and our ambulance within the Department of Public Safety. If the money is not used when we purchase a new ambulance or a new fire truck, the money that is usually the money that is in this account is put towards that purchase. We currently have $20,000 because we funded that last year. So this money will be added to that $20,000. And as we get closer to purchasing a new ambulance or a new fire truck, this money will be used for that purpose if it's not spent for maintenance in the meantime.
Please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article and that this article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. This will be a simple voice vote and a simple majority is required. Do we have any questions? Okay, we will vote on Article 16. All those in favor? You? All those opposed? Article 16 passes. Do I hear a motion on Article 17?
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 for the payment of the final year of a 3-year lease for the recreation bus lease. This appropriation is to come from general taxation.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article and that this article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. The vote will be a simple voice vote and a simple majority is required. Do we have any questions?
The lease buyout is this payment. So the bus will belong to the town at the completion of this payment.
If there are no questions, we'll take a vote on Article 17. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Article 17 passes. Do I have a motion on Article 18?
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $45,000 for the purpose of leasing a 3/4 ton pickup truck with plow gear and to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 for the first year's payment for that purpose. This lease agreement contains an escape clause. This appropriation is to come from general taxation.
Second,
I second that motion.
please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article and that this article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. So it will be a simple voice vote and a simple majority is required for approval. Any questions?
Tim Smith, are we adding a truck or are we?
No.
Okay.
This is a replacement for our existing 3/4 ton. We have a vehicle replacement plan. Generally, trucks like this last anywhere from 5 to 10 years or so. It is used at some points. It is used all the time to plow our parking lots generally, and it can be used in emergency situations. It's large enough to do some of the back roads and some of the cul-de-sacs and things like that. So the reason that we're entering a lease and not buying it outright is for total tax rate impact. We're just trying to spread it out over 3 years. And even leases now are pretty inexpensive from a borrowing standpoint. So that's why the selectmen are recommending that we do this through a lease program.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. Why aren't you using the CIP?
Sorry, I can't.
Are you asking why aren't we using the fund balance versus?
I'm sorry, Nina, I don't. No, the capital improvement plan lays out how we fund purchases like this, but that there's not a separate amount of money for that. We still have to raise and appropriate the money. We decided not to fund this particular purchase lease through the fund balance. We're taking it out of general taxation, but that goes back to that total of $148,000 that we're looking at for this year. This was just something that got added in as tax money. Yep.
Any other questions? Oh, okay, we'll vote on Article 18. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Okay. Article 18 passes. Do I hear a motion on Article 19?
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the Curious George Cottage Capital Reserve previously established. This appropriation is to come from the December 31st, 2020 fund balance available on January 1st, 2021.
Have a second?
I second.
Please note the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article, and this article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. Be a simple voice vote, and a simple majority is required for approval.
For Clara, I have heard a few questions in the last couple of weeks regarding the cottage. The town owns the Curious George Cottage. The Ray Center operates the programming that goes on there. Things like the literary discussion group, the speaker series, the children's programming that goes on through the cottage. But the town is responsible to maintain the building. This $10,000 is to be added to a capital reserve account and to be used for maintenance and improvements at the cottage itself.
Do we have any questions? Barry?
Well, the money is going to be used for repairs and maintenance of the cottage, not to be used for any of the programs. It's the town responsibility for maintaining the building.
That's correct. Any maintenance improvements, anything that's done at the cottage is our responsibility.
We control what's spent there.
That's correct. The selectmen have to authorize expenditures from this account. Yep.
Patty Fergal. Is the Curious George Cottage handled differently than the library, the town library building, which is also owned by the town?
Different in what way? We appropriate.
Well, there's a special article about the Curious George Cottage and an additional $10,000 into a reserve fund. Is there such a fund for the library building?
Yes, actually, we appropriated $75,000 2 years ago for improvements at the library, and that money is maintained in a separate account that can only be used for improvements
And
at the
that still
library.
exists?
And it's still, there is a balance. I can check that for you.
Fine, as long as it's still
There
there.
is still there.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Any other questions? No. Okay, so we will vote on Article 19. All those in favor, raise your red card, please. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Do I hear a motion on Article 20?
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the road repair capital reserve previously established. This appropriation is to come from the December 31st, 2019 fund balance and available on January 1st, 2021.
I second that motion.
Please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend.
I believe there's a typo in the script here. I think it should have been the December 31st, 2020 fund balance, not 19.
That's correct.
Yes.
So if let me restate.
Let's restate. Do I have a motion?
Motion. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the road repair capital reserve previously established. This appropriation is to come from the December 31st, 2020 fund balance, available on January 1st, 2021.
And I second that motion again.
Please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article, and this article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. It will be a voice vote, and a simple majority is required for approval.
This is a small amount of money. However, because of state law, we have to have a separate warrant article for each capital reserve item. And that's why this money goes into a special reserve. And this money is used for very general and emergency repairs, such, things like potholes in the spring and that sort of expenditure. So.
Do we have any questions? Nope. Okay, we will vote on Article 20. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Article 20 passes. Do I hear a motion on Article 21?
Yes, Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the support of the Historical Society. Funding for this to come from general taxation.
Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Please note that the selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article, and the article is not included in the overall budget in Article 22. Will be a voice vote and a simple majority is required. Did we have somebody to make a presentation? Reggie, do you want to come up? Is that?
You have 3 slides, Mark?
Yeah, I am getting, hopefully. Which one do you?
Start with the budget.
Oh, let's try to get rid of that for you. Computer does not want to work. Hey, there you go.
That's the second one. Can you back up one? If you can't, we'll just do this.
The budget?
Budget. So the Historical Society was incorporated. This is our 3rd year. And the 10,000 that we get from the town sustains our operating budget along with dues and memberships. And with that money in the last year, we've purchased a computer. We got an almost $10,000 grant from the Moose Plate grant fund. We've hired an archivist for $1,000 a week who's done an amazing job to help us set up archiving software and preservation systems, taught our volunteers how to do things. The documents that we have been preserving this year with the $10,000 were the town's documents that used to be in an old an old metal filing cabinets in the basement of Town Hall, and were degrading rapidly from environmental conditions. So we've preserved them. We are now looking for more grant money for some high quality audio, visual, and projection equipment. We want to get capture oral histories from Valley old timers and work on more educational projects. We have developed a website that is still in progress. It's integrated with our Facebook presence, and we will be using that software going forward to try and put a lot of the archival documents online in a searchable database for the public to use. Last year, we also designed and paid for a historical exhibit displayed on the wall in the Welcome Center. And we also have an exhibit next to Town Hall, next to the post office in Town Square that we've been changing quarterly to show some old Valley artifacts. So could we go to the next slide, Mark, the one that is how the community benefits?
This one?
Yes, okay. So this is just a summary of what we've done and how we benefit the community. We're preserving historical items, including the ones belonging to the town. We're aiding in research. We've done school presentations. We've led cellar hole hikes. We led several trolley tours last year before COVID and plan to do a lot more this year. We set up exhibits at the Welcome Center in Town Square, and we're working on our website database. We've done community building and outreach through Red Cross blood drives, and we started and organized the Getting to Know the Valley Days that have been held on Labor Day weekends. We also hope to do a Victorian Day. The planning for that got derailed in COVID, but we may be able to pull that off this year where people dress in Victorian dress, and we involve all of the town square, the stores in town square, the school, and a lot of other parts of the valley in that. And so that's what we do with the money. And the big thing that we're planning is to try and build a multi-use building in the town to be used as a museum and also for other uses. And that's our goal. None of that comes from town money. The town money is just our operating budget. And with that, it energizes the volunteers, the donors, and all the other things that we do have come from grant money and independent other donations. Are there any questions?
Any questions? No, thank you. Okay, we will vote on Article 21. All those in favor, please raise the red card. All those opposed? Article 21 passes. Okay, at this point, we are going to move on to Article 22, which is the main budget. We have about 17 minutes left until the ballot close on Articles 9 and 10. So if you have not voted yet, keep that in mind and get your ballots in. I will make an announcement when we hit the 1 hour mark and close the ballot box on those two articles, but we will move on. We'll move on to the budget. Do I hear a motion on Article 22?
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,228,752 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations from any of the preceding articles. This appropriation is to come from general taxation.
Have a second?
I second.
This is the general fund operating budget for fiscal year 2021. Mark, the selectman or Mark will address the questions, but would you like to start with the presentation or? Okay, we also have an amendment to this budget.
Yes, I would like to move that the town operating budget be amended to add $150,000 to the capital improvements line item and $10,000 to the general government line item for legal services. These funds are to provide contingency funds for the town water system improvement project, which is currently ongoing, and for ongoing legal matters.
Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
This article would increase the overall budget in Article 22 to $4,388,752. This vote can take any form, and it will be a simple majority vote. Now we have a presentation.
In 2019, the town approved a $1 million bond issue for improvements to our water system, which included connecting both well number 3 and well number 2 to the new treatment building. And it included a new crossing of the Mad River for our water distribution line. Because of COVID, we did not get that project out to bid, or we did not complete any construction towards that project. We're still in the permitting process for that $1 million. We have been told by our engineering firm that they are seeing increases over engineering estimates of about 15% or more in some of their larger municipal projects, things like water lines, things like wastewater plants, that sort of thing. And our current cost estimates that we have, that we base that authorization of the $1 million bond on, was it's about 18 months old at this point in time. So the $150,000 for the water improvement capital line, that the amendment would give us a 15% contingency if when we put it out to bid later this year. So that's the majority of this amendment. Additionally, we have some ongoing legal matters, and we've already spent almost over a third, coming up on a half of our annual budget for legal services. So we would like to add $10,000 to that amount. So the total of this amendment is $160,000. And the impact of that, if you look on page, in your town report, at the budget summary on pages 12 and 13, at the bottom of that, you will see an amount which shows that the impact on the tax rate of the budget, the way that it was originally proposed, would have been a 3 cent per thousand decrease in the budget, right? This very bottom number here. If you approve this amendment and add the $160,000 to the budget, the tax impact of that will be a tax increase of about 45 cents instead of a tax decrease of 3 cents. Yeah. So if you approve the amendment, this number at the bottom, instead of being minus 3 cents, it would be plus 45 cents. Okay. If we don't do, especially the $150,000 portion of this amendment, and we put the project out to bid with just the authorization of $1 million, if the bids come in over $1 million, the selectmen are not allowed to award that bid because they won't have enough money available authorized by town meeting to do that. So that's why we need the contingency amount, because we do expect that if the prices are going up and we have an 18-month-old cost estimate, that we could be short, and the selectmen can't award the bid without this authorization. So we want to have that flexibility. If the money is not used, if the bids come in within the $1 million that's already been approved with that bond issue, then this money will revert to fund balance and can come back the way that we normally use it.
Are there any questions on the amendment at this point? Nothing? Okay, so right now we are voting on the amendment to add $150,000 to the capital improvements line item and $10,000 to the general government line item for legal services. These funds are to provide contingency funds for the town water system improvement project, which is currently ongoing, and ongoing legal matters. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your red cards. All those opposed to the amendment? The amendment passes. So I'm going to reread the original. I'm going to reread Article 22 with the new amount in. I move that the town vote to raise and approve the sum of $4,388,752 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations from any of the preceding articles, and this appropriation is to come from general taxation. Mark, did you want to make a presentation on that?
The town report includes all of the detailed budget information on pages 14 through 19. That shows you each department by department, what we are spending this amount of money on. There is additional information on our debt service, which is a major portion of this budget. That's included on pages 60 and 61 if you would like to look at those. I don't have a formal presentation. We've already been here over an hour, and I would like to answer any questions that you have about any of the departments. We have department heads here who can tell you about their operations if you have any questions.
Questions?
Thank you much, moderator. My name is Tim Rose. I live at 11 Sylvan Lane. I'm not a Waterville resident, but I do pay property taxes. My question is, tonight we've passed a number of different amendments adding to the general tax that will ultimately add to the general taxation amount we pay. And I'm wondering if you could tell me what the total amount is that we are going to add as a result of accepting these amendments this afternoon.
Yeah, good question, Tim. On page, again, going to page 13, it shows at the bottom here, all of these numbers with the estimated amount of taxes to raise. All of these numbers here include all of the warrant articles that you've approved so far. The change here is this amendment that has been approved increases the 2021 proposed budget by the $160,000. And that's why the impact on the tax rate at the bottom of this page, instead of being -3 cents, is now, if you approve this warrant article, the way it's amended, it'll be plus 45 cents.
Thank you.
Okay. These numbers include everything that you've done so far.
Any other questions? Okay, I guess we will go ahead and vote on Article 22 as amended. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. All those opposed? Article 22 as amended passes. Okay, we are still about 5 minutes short of the closing of the ballot box, so let's move on to Article 23. Do I have a motion on Article 23?
Yes, Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to negotiate the terms and conditions of the sale of an approximately 0.8 acre lot abutting Corcoran Pond at or above fair market value at the time of sale to the Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Chapel, a domestic nonprofit corporation. Said lot to be subdivided from tax ID 105-001-001-00. Said authority to lapse 1 year after this approval.
Do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
The vote will be a voice vote and a simple majority is required. Eric Barth from the Chapel Committee will do a presentation on this article. and take questions. Eric? I may interrupt you to tell you that the polls are closing, but, or Birdie, sorry.
Yeah, good evening. At the town meeting of 2019, a warrant was passed by townspeople to support the construction of a non-denominational memorial chapel owned by the town on Corcoran Pond, the RFK Memorial Chapel. It was passed with a majority vote. Since then, the board on the RFK Memorial Chapel made up of myself, Chair Tom Gross, Co-Chair Katie Smith, Secretary and Treasurer Terry Roper, Jack Sanders, Rob Wilson, and Eric Barth, who replaced Christine DeStefano, having been working for these past years towards that goal. The selectmen and Mark Dakota kindly also have given their time and advice. We selected architect Eric Barth, who has been working tirelessly and who has donated his time and talent to the project. The land has been surveyed and the soil tested. We obtained our 501c3 from the IRS as a nonprofit with volunteer help from Larry Gannon. Plans have been completed and will be presented tonight by Eric. So again, we are ready to come before the townspeople to get your approval for the chapel board to purchase the land on Corcoran's Pond that was designated for that purpose by the town. If it is passed, we will then be able to begin our fundraising campaign. We believe this chapel will greatly add a great fabric to the community, a place for solace and reflection and coming together. And we hope you will give us your support tonight. Eric Barth will now give you a presentation of the plans, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions afterwards.
Thanks, Bertie. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Eric Barth. I'm an architect. I live in Boston. My family's been in the Valley for 50 years. This is just a really exciting project. It's been an absolute privilege to work on it. And as Bertie said, I volunteered my time out of my love for the Valley and just being here my whole life. So I'll try to run through this as quickly as possible because I know we've been here. Why don't we move on to the second slide? Thanks. So Tom Corcoran, the visionary of the—
Excuse me, Eric, sorry, the polls have closed. The ballot box is closed on Articles 9 and 10. Excuse me, sorry.
No worries. So part of one of the main ideas behind the chapel is the Valley is, this place that we all hold is really sacred, and this place is it's a place of rejuvenation and spirituality. And Tom Corcoran's vision, which is up on the screen, coupled with that inherent quality of the Valley, has led us to this place of looking to create a spiritual home in the Valley. Next slide. So Tom Corcoran was, his close friend was Bobby Kennedy. And that was kind of the way this idea was born, was to create a chapel and to memorialize and honor Bobby, and also to serve the people of the Valley. So the proposed location is just across the pond from us. It's a site that's landlocked. If you go to the next slide. So it's number 5 on the site plan here. So it's a landlocked site. There's no public access to it and no public utilities, and it's relatively underutilized at the time being, or at the current moment. So as we designed the chapel to blend in to the surroundings as much as possible. So you can see that the XC ski path, we've designed it to be rerouted adjacent to, thank you, adjacent to the small stream. And then we also designed the chapel to be integrated into the proposed walking path, which would go around the pond. So in the design of the site plan, or in the design of the site, we've been very sensitive to the what's there now and how to create a place that maximally utilizes the natural environment and the surroundings. Next slide. The chapel itself is around 2,270 square feet with two smaller 70 square foot rooms in the back. It seats about 150 people with room for 30 or 40 more out on that terrace immediately adjacent to the main sanctuary. You can see the XC ski trail would stay. It'd just be rerouted right around, and that walking path would come down in front. The main entry is to the south, which is to the left on this drawing, and the chapel itself looks almost directly north to magnetic north. Next slide. So the design was really inspired by the natural environment and the beauty of the valley. So on the upper left-hand diagram, you can see we thought about how we could bring the sun and light into the chapel to really make it a place that's well activated and bright and vibrant. We did that by creating a light monitor that doubles as a steeple. Secondly, the diagram on the right, the Corcoran's Pond blue is a little bit light, but we wanted to connect the chapel to the pond as much as possible. And we did that by creating a reflecting pool and locating the chapel immediately adjacent to the pond. On the bottom left, you can see the different entry points and how you access the chapel. So the main entry is on the southern side with an operable facade on the east and a secondary entry on the north. And on the bottom right-hand diagram, we tried to create as many views out to the natural environment as possible. So the entire chapel is oriented directly in between the two peaks of Osceola. And it opens up and has glass around to see outside as much as possible. Next slide. So the material palette, we kept it as simple as possible and related it to the character of Bobby Kennedy. Just this idea of being grounded and strong and tenacious of stone, being authentic, generous, and adaptable, flexible, that's inherent in timber, and then this introspectiveness, idealist, visionary component that we saw in the glass. Next slide. And we were really sensitive to this idea of the Waterville Valley vernacular and what the architecture is here and what it's going to be over the next 20 to 30 years. And so we were very cognizant of where that evolution is going, and we tried to tie in the design with that materiality as much as possible. Next slide. So a big component to the design is this RFK memorial timeline, which is essentially it's like an architectural element. It's this wall that kind of weaves in and outside of the building, and you can follow the life of Bobby Kennedy. You don't necessarily have to go inside, you can experience it from outside, but it will have different important milestones of his life, quotations from him, potentially even something to memorialize Tom Corcoran out in the pond, which is the one on the far right that you see. Next slide. As I mentioned, we have this light monitor to really bring light and warmth down into the chapel, and that combination of lots of natural daylight and wood will make this just a really warm, nice place to be and contemplate. Next slide. One thing I forgot to mention earlier was this is a non-denominational multi-faith chapel. It's not associated with any specific denomination. It's open to any faith and any person. It would likely be used for weddings just because of the beautiful scenery and the size that we designed it for. As you can see up in that upper right, but the idea that we had in the geometry of the actual truss and the architecture was to emulate the geometry of Osceola and kind of bring together that idea of two things coming together. So we tried to pull that into the architecture of the chapel itself. Next slide. So here's an interior rendering looking down the aisle that kind of expresses what I was just getting at. So you can see out on all three sides, pretty transparent, and it's kind of got this quality of being inside and being protected from the elements, but you also feel really connected to the place and you feel like you're outside. Next slide. Here's the entry from the south, looking out towards the pond beyond the chapel. The roof element itself, it's meant to collect water, protect, and kind of offer a comfortable entry at every point possible. Next slide. So here's a view as if you're on a kayak or a paddleboard on the water looking at the chapel. And again, the idea here is that it does blend into the surrounding environment, but it also stands out, and it uses a very simple material palette, but it's still a bold design to be something unique that could really give our valley an extra element of something that's special, and a place where people can gather. Next slide. Here's looking at it from the town dock. Next slide. And here's if you walked outside and walked down to the left and looked across the pond, relatively to scale what it would look like. Next slide. Here's from Valley Road looking across the pond. Next slide. And here's a twilight view across the pond, and the idea is it'd be something that would be lit up at night, and it'd be kind of this warm lantern type feeling that would give a whole nother dimension of character to the pond in the evening and at night as well. So here's our tentative fundraising schedule. So this is all based, or fundraising and design schedule. So this is all based on how much we're able to fundraise and how quickly. We may potentially do it in a phased construction, but if everything, depending on how the fundraising goes, if we're able to fundraise relatively quickly, construction could start as early as April 2024. And that could be broken into 2 phases that'd be separated over the course of a year. Next slide. So that's it for the design. Thanks.
Do we have any questions for Bertie and Eric? Any questions? Is there any parking?
Going to be a chapel that you walk to, so parking will be in any of the lodges or from Town Square, and we're working with various people like Golden Eagle and so on to acquire parking from them. But it's pretty much you walk and basically from Town Square.
But I would also add that it would be fully ADA accessible, so we'd have a place for a van to park, and the building itself is going to be designed to be ADA accessible.
Jacqueline Cook, I have multiple questions. Thank you for putting in the effort. I feel like one thing that's always been missing from this valley for me has been a chapel or a church. So I think this is very exciting, but I have multiple questions. The first, this is already town-owned land. So the association will be buying the land from the town. And then any wedding revenue that occurs would be going to the chapel association. So that's a private entity at that point. And my third question, will there be weekly services at this chapel? For Sunday services, I mean, for a chapel, for a community, will there be services available there?
Yeah, but it would be, so there would be different, basically the committee would rent out to different denominations or the faith groups to be able to hold services, but the committee itself wouldn't hold the service.
That's something that as a town, we could then decide to rent space. Is that how I understand that?
If the town, like if we wanted to have town meeting there or something, we could rent the space there. It
Or
would,
church
because,
service.
well, the church service, probably not through the town, but a faith group, as Eric said, anybody could come in and could rent the space from the committee or whoever's operating the chapel at that time. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I should add that probably we will have, hopefully be able to have a part-time assistant or somebody to administrate the building.
Hi, Morgan Deem, Sunnyside. What is fair market value for this piece of land?
We don't have that number at this point because we need to do a survey and we need to, the assessing agent that works for the town will determine, once we get the exact layout of it, they'll do a market analysis and we'll come up with a price for 0.8 of an acre on that particular spot. But so we don't know that number yet.
On Burko, a couple of questions. You mentioned doing this in phases. What happens if you don't have enough money to do what you want?
We've discussed that. We had a phase 1 and phase 2. And if we didn't raise the funds, we would start a phase 2 plan, which would just be the foundation. And then we would have more sort of like the arbor that is presently existing on Terrell's property. So there would be an open space with a tent and something.
But you're asking for permission to build a chapel, not an arbor.
Right. No, that's true. I think probably we would have to come before the town again, maybe to get.
But meanwhile, you already own the property. So 11 months from now, you come up with $300,000 and you buy the land.
Yes.
And 12 months after that, you don't have enough money to do anything but a foundation. What happens to the property? What's the town going to do with that?
Well, I guess we would try to run it as they do now with the wedding
But
ceremony.
you're promising us a beautiful chapel.
Yes.
And you're saying, but you might end up with just the basement.
No.
Alan?
So I don't think we would actually move forward unless we thought we'd have the funds to complete at least, so when it's not necessarily the basement, when we say the arbor, what we mean is that pavilion and that timeline, which would be something you could still have outdoor weddings at. But we wouldn't even necessarily move forward with that unless we thought we had substantial funds to complete the whole thing. So a lot of this
So
depends.
you're saying trust me, right?
No, that the
No,
selectmen,
wait,
Alan.
yeah, Alan, so the wording of the warrant article is to authorize the selectmen to negotiate the sale. Okay,
So this is not an obligation to
this
sell.
is not an obligation at this point. It's the authority for the selectmen to sell that, but to negotiate the terms. So
And
things
conditions.
like, and the conditions.
conditions.
So the sale may be conditional based on them getting the funding or whatever. The selectmen can decide that. Okay, so
Just to be clear,
there's
I asked
there's a
once.
process that goes
So
along with this.
You're giving them a right to buy the land without you having the obligation to sell it.
Right. If we can't come to terms with them on a suitable sale agreement with some of the things you've talked about, there might be some thresholds that need to be made before they can take the land. They might have to prove, show how they're going to drainage water and how they're going to fund it.
How they're going to maintain it.
It's right. We don't
After
have
they
to
build
sell it to them on their terms. If this is authorized, we will sell it to them on the town's terms, meaning there'll be public hearings on this. There'll be a whole bunch of discussion on this. And these questions will come up and be dealt with.
And there will be a written agreement for the sale.
I understand what you're saying. I'm still insecure in the fact that they're going to be able to fund this, but I believe you. One comment about the building, and I think it's a beautiful building. I don't like the steeple. I don't find that to be multi-denominational anything. But to me, you mentioned blending into the environment. To me, the steeple stands out. I know you have a light feature. There's no bells. There's no electronic music coming out of it. But to me, the steeple is exclusive and not inclusive.
Ralphman, I think you did a beautiful presentation. I think the building is, is very attractive and you've taken everything into consideration. But I agree with Alan on a couple of things, but I have questions. Is there a bathroom in there? Is there any heat in there? Is there any air conditioning in there? What about bathrooms?
So we don't have a bathroom currently in there because there is no plumbing down
Right.
in that area, right?
Right.
So we have talked extensively with the town, and we're going to coordinate with the town in getting temporary restrooms close by. And in the long term, hopefully having some sort of beach pavilion adjacent to the chapel will serve as bathrooms.
But the town has no bathrooms. They want to have them, but they have the land for it, but I guess I should ask you, I know you have the land, but are you able to bring bathrooms in and do what you want?
We're still working on it.
Still working on it. So it's 2 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay. I agree with the steeple thing. It's not non-denominational, although you want it to be. So I think that I would like you to reconsider. And one of the things is the seating arrangement that you have something that you would not consider something different? Because that's not non-denominational either at all. Because if you want it non-denominational, you have to be able to have any faith group come in and be able to move the chairs around in a manner that's appropriate for their services. And that is not, what you presented is not.
Understood. That's not set in stone. We have that in there at the time being, but that could change in the future.
Okay. And do you know what, do you have a ballpark figure of the amount of money that you feel you need to raise in order to accomplish this beautiful, I mean, it is,
Yes. We figure it's going to be about $1,500,000. Build the building, yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a big challenge to raise that. But we
Okay.
think we can do it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I also might say that we've been in touch with other mountain churches and chapels. And there's one in Vail, which is also, multi-denomination interfaith chapel, as well as in Sugarloaf. And they manage pretty well. And a lot of their design is like ours.
Right,
in terms of
but a
seats.
lot of things have changed in the last, let's say, 10 to 20 years, unless it's a brand new building. When you say multiple denominational, you never thought, or no one never thought actually, that the number of religions that there are that come up here, and we see them, at the Golden Eagle. We see groups of 10 or 20, and they're enjoying themselves very much. They could not use or would not use that chapel. Sorry. So I'm just saying, I'm not trying to change the whole thing. I'm just saying, think about every denomination and what they would appreciate having as a place to have services that are meaningful to them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Bill Powell. Couple things. We're talking about the land tonight, and I guess what I'm asking for anyone who wants to answer, if we approve this and the land is successfully sold to the 501c3, but then you fail to raise the money to build the chapel. I'm sorry. My question is, if we pass this and you're allowed to negotiate with the town and buy the land, and that is done successfully, but you were unsuccessful in raising the money to build the chapel, and now you own land, but maybe you decide you don't want to build the chapel anymore. What happens to the land? Are we back
Bill,
here?
Yeah.
Bill, that could be part of the negotiation to have a reversion clause
Reversion
or
clause.
something like that.
Okay.
So, I mean, that
But
would
the
be
town would
part
be
of.
obligated perhaps at some point
Yeah,
down the road to buy.
absolutely. That, I mean, that's all part
Buy
of
it back.
what the negotiations would be.
All right, and I have a fundraising question. Do you have angels out there? I mean, you have some vision as to where this money is going to come from? I didn't mean
Well,
angels.
I
That was
don't know if
probably
Tom
bad
Rose
use.
is here. We have some possible donors and we're
Tom's gonna fund
hoping that they come through
Tom's
for us.
gonna fund
They're
it?
not written in stone yet, but.
Wow.
All right. And then just a flat out opinion, attaching, and nothing against the Kennedy family, attaching a political figure as polarizing as Kennedy with the chapel seems like a little bit of a mixed message. That's just personal opinion.
Tom, did you want to?
Oh, just, yeah, there have been people when this first came to light. No pun intended there. There were some people who approached me on this with what could be very substantial contributions for this project. They did have some stipulations, so we're going to have to see how that unfolds. But there have been people who are very interested in seeing this come to fruition and have offered some pretty significant funds. So,
Thank you.
Hi, Cynthia Powell. I just have a couple questions. Tonight, the vote is about strictly the land. Would there be a possible, I know 2 years ago, Tom made a presentation when he first presented to the town this whole idea of a sanctuary, which I think was unanimously approved. You at the time showed us two different types, and I think one was in Aspen and one, I'm not sure, but they were out west, two beautiful open air chapels that were very much non-denominational. Is that a possible fallback if you weren't, if this is plan A, could that possibly be a plan B? Yeah, because I think the interior of the structure looks, we're not here actually to debate the particulars of this structure, correct? Which just really the land tonight, so.
yeah, I think, we have to go through the process and the proper steps. And this is one, we really couldn't go any further until this was established.
Mhm.
So I think the vote tonight just gets us rolling. If the fundraising falls way short, I don't think we want to have just a foundation there.
Right.
I think we want to see this through one way or the other. But tonight is like a starting point for that to happen. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the next question I had is just where is the present, that's the present sort of, not the gazebo, where the weddings are held? Is that like right on the other side of that bush? Like, will they see
The
each
arbor?
other? Yeah, will they see each other or is it separated enough?
That won't be, they'll be eliminated. I don't think they will have.
Oh, I thought it was owned by.
Well, that's going to be a hotel.
It's going to be a hotel, and we've been working with the Tyrell Group owns that land. So we've been negotiating with them, and they have, been very amenable to allowing us to get in. For instance, if there's an emergency or there's a fire, or you'll have access to.
So there wouldn't be like two weddings potentially.
There will not be dueling weddings there.
Thank you.
If I may, just to clarify one point, this is not quite about the land. It's to authorize the select board to engage in negotiations with the chapel nonprofit, which has identified town land that it would like to use to build a chapel. And so the select board will be holding hearings, as Mike said, but we're talking about terms and conditions, and not just financial terms and conditions. So what you're authorizing with the yes vote would be to allow us to engage in those discussions, but it doesn't predetermine any outcome whatsoever.
And the other thing in there to pay note to is this is only for a year. You know, this will have to be re-voted on if no progress is made next year.
Hi, my name's Allison Darnell, Windsor Hill Way. In all the previous articles, you referenced that the selectmen vote was 3-0 for the vote, but you didn't mention it on this one. Does that mean that it wasn't unanimous?
I can
I'm
answer
just
that.
curious.
Basically, we felt this was something that the town ought to be able to look at without our weighing in on one way or the other, to decide whether this was something you really wanted the selectmen to do.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mike Long. Were there, for this piece of land, were there other, does the town have any other plans for its use? Aside from selling it?
I'm not aware of any
No,
plans. There's some plans for a parcel of land that the town owns next to it.
Right.
To build a pavilion, a bathhouse.
A bathhouse or a pavilion
Which
or
is-
some kind of structure by
Turned
the
out to
beach,
be-
but nothing specifically in the area that they're proposing for this.
And it's approximately 0.8 of an acre too, so that'll be negotiated as well.
And how close would I'm aware that like the bathhouse, and how close is that, would that be?
We have a slide if you keep going down.
They're pretty much adjacent, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it would be, yeah, some separation, but.
Yep, right here.
Okay. And I would, just one thing about the words and how it's being framed is when you hear non-denominational, you think of that more as Christian.
Can you speak up, please?
So when you hear non-denominational, you think of it as different Christian sects. So you have to be very careful how you frame this as truly as interfaith. And my biggest concern is when I see that is actually the steeple. So it doesn't seem inclusive.
Okay.
Did we have any more questions? No. Okay, one more.
Hi there, Jacob Barowitz. I'm just on the topic of I think this is a great dialogue that we're having about all this kind of interfaith stuff. And I'm wondering what kind of roads you guys are taking to are you reaching out to various faiths and stuff? Like, is it a collective discussion that's going into these plans? Like that's my question.
We haven't really had any collective discussions yet. I mean, we certainly look forward to doing that in the future.
Awesome, thank you. I just wanted to put that out as something that as a community, we could kind of work together to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything else? No. Okay, so we are going to vote on Article 23, which is to allow the selectmen to negotiate the terms and conditions of the sale of approximately 0.8 acre lot abutting Corcoran's Pond at or above fair market value. All those in favor, please raise your red cards. All those opposed? Okay, and that article passes. Thank you. Before we move on, I want to give you the results of Articles 9 and 10. Article 9, the $5 million bond, 88 ballots were cast, 83 yes, 5 no's, so that article passes. Article 10, the $900,000 bond, 88 ballots were cast, 87 yes, 1 no. So that article passed. Thank you. Okay, do I hear a motion for Article 24?
Did you want to move to 22 first?
Reconsider? Or just
Reconsider?
just do the motion to reconsider.
Right.
Do the motion to reconsider.
Okay.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make the following motion. I move to limit reconsideration of all preceding articles.
I will second.
So I just want to explain for those of you, a motion to limit reconsideration just means that we cannot go back to any of the money articles and change them in any way. They will be locked in for the rest of the meeting.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion passes. Limit reconsideration. Now we'll move on to Article 24.
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend Selectmen's Ordinance Number 8, titled Noise Ordinance, dated July 13th, 1988. Amendments include clarifying the description of unreasonable noise related to construction activity, adding other sources of noise disturbances, and inclusion of a description of loud noise related to the operation of parked and moving motor vehicles. All of the changes make this ordinance consistent with applicable state law, including New Hampshire Revised Statute amended 31:39, Section 1N, related to noise regulation by a town.
Second,
I will second.
and this vote can take any form and a simple majority is required. Do we have any questions on this article?
The packets, as you came in, there was information that included what our current regulation is and what the proposed amendments are. So that's in this document here.
Morgan?
There, Morgan Beam. Just sort of, this might be a question for Chief Noise. How many noise complaints a year do we get?
I can give you a rough estimate of probably, depending on the year, probably a couple dozen to 40 a year, roughly.
And this is probably a follow-up question for you as well. Do we have sort of like a decibel reader? How are we going to measure what's unreasonable noise? Like Bike Week, for an example.
Well, it's specified in the statute of what unreasonable, typically if it's beyond 50 feet and the officer can hear it, or based on complaints. So really all this amendment to the ordinance is a housekeeping issue. The way that we enforce this really isn't going to change at all. All this does is just helps us where the state statute is very broad. It allows the RSAs allow the town to be very, very specific on the specific types of noise that we're doing. And all those changes are based on the complaints throughout the years that we're getting from all of you of the types of noise that's being generated out there, and just makes it a little easier for us to enforce it.
If I can also make an observation, if you look at the ordinance as it stands now, it relates just to construction activity. That's the only noise that it regulates. So this is an attempt to widen that ordinance, putting it more in line with what a town ordinance ought to be.
And it allows us to enforce it at a town level and not at a state level, is really what it does.
Any other questions? Okay, we're going to take a vote on Article 24. Whoops. Oh, I'm sorry.
Moderator, can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
So does the ordinance look at who's making the noise? In other words, if I'm using my leaf blower versus a contractor coming in and using his leaf blower, is it enforced any differently?
No, it isn't. It says in the ordinance, it's any person and or corporation or group. So it doesn't differentiate.
And we're looking at certain hours too. I'm not sure you'd be using your leaf blower after 10 at night.
We'll still show up at your house if it's.
I hope not too.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll vote on Article 24. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, Article 24 passes. We are getting there. Article 25, at this point where there are no agents, auditors, or committees appointed, plan to make a presentation at this meeting. So we'll move on to Article 26 and see if there is anyone who would like to make a presentation at this time, or is any other business.
Any other business?
I believe we have somebody from the recycling committee who'd like to make a presentation.
I'm Irit Levy. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm on the Municipal Solid Waste Committee and the Recycling Committee, along with others. And you may have been distributed this sheet. Not, doesn't look like you have them. So. The news that the Recycling Committee has is that we have a new program, a new TREX program. So the school is promoting a TREX program that's called Bags to Bench. So you will see two bins, one in front of the elementary school and one close to the post office, if you haven't seen it already. So that bin will take plastic bags like this, your produce bags, no plastic bottles, please. Cellophane wrappers, celery wraps, salad bags. What they do is they will collect them and bring them to Market Basket, where trucks will collect it. It gets weighed in town. It's brought to Market Basket. And after 500 pounds of this, the school will qualify for a bench. So we'd like to see more donations and less of this in our waste stream and less in the landfills. So I thank you for doing that.
Thank you. As we have no other business in front of us, unless anyone else has anything to say, I'd like to thank the selectmen, the staff and the volunteers, and all of you for coming. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn the town meeting.
And I will second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Town meeting is adjourned. Thank you.